just a minute. Am I live? I can't tell if I'm live or not. I don't know what's going on with this. Okay. No, you did not just get pranked for a minute. It says my connection's unstable, so I'm. If you can see me, you can see me. So, I'm a strawberry. I'm the delicious strawberry in the forest. Okay. So, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful, and may you be safe. May everyone watching be happy. May everyone watching be healthy. May everyone watching be peaceful, and may everyone watching be safe. May all things be happy. May all things be healthy. May all things be peaceful, and may all things be safe. So, Mr. Froggy, what do you want to listen to? You're the one that brought me out of my cave. Oh no, that needs to be reset. Mic rubbing, absolutely. I'll give this a chance to reset. Open. Exactly what the doctor ordered. Absolutely. That's just the medication. Fuzzy brain. Consult your doctor if ASMR fuzzy brain lasts for 4 hours or longer. ASMR may cause drowsiness, sleepiness, impairment while driving vehicles. Feelings of euphoria. In general, wellness. Consult your doctor if ASMR is right for you. It's like insanity. You gotta love the dad hat. Has anyone actually bought that shirt? Besides one of these days gonna add more shirts. I need to alter it to make a dancing bear shirt. But I would want to draw a better dancing bear shirt. Like a JoJo meme where he's making the Dio walking towards somebody. Like that's what I like, a JoJo bear face. I mean, he already has the Saitama, like, okay face. All that goes without saying. An incredibly buff, effeminate dancing bear in a bear suit. it's more like navy dark. I can see Dad had on the gray shirt. That looks good. Someone wanted the hazard free as a shirt. So when I was making the shirt, I wanted more this color than this dark color. You could see Dad had on this blue more than you can see it on this black. But I'm just limited to how Streamlabs does whatever. I have ideas for more shirts. That's just one of them. Not really. I think I lowered the price. It should be 16. I get like a couple dollars, not much at all. I mean, the money goes to like making the shirt and then like shipping it. I mean, the business is gotta make their money, you know. That's more like if you guys just wanted it for yourself, it's not really like something I get money for. I could definitely lower the pricing. So I was looking at it, and if I subscribe to their like ultra whatever, I get like $2 extra. But right now, at $16, they give me like $4 out of your thing. So the shirt costs $12 for them. It actually costs like $10 for them, but like they mark it up because they're a business. And then you gotta pay shipping, and the shipping wasn't bad when I ordered this shirt. It was actually really good. Who isn't robbing me? Like, Twitch takes half of every subscribe that I get, so I mean, like, anyways, I'm not on here for the money. I mean, like, the money does help pay some bills, but like, not many. I mean, I'm in college right now, so like, the plan is to like get a full-time job, and like, I mean, they all get some salmonella now. I mean, I'd rather you guys get something tangible. I mean, the giving the subs and the bits, those are just tips for me. Like, I get that. This is a tip-based job. I mean, advertisements do not. I get maybe like $3 a month on advertisements. It's very, very little. And like that's because I also don't subscribe to like you guys seeing more ads too. Because like if I like did something, I would get like 55% for every sub, but you guys would be like seeing way more ads, and I don't completely understand it. Like, I know some people don't have ads after the pre-roll, and I don't know how to fix that or like change that at all. I mean, this is looking behind the sausage and how it's made, but like, yeah. I mean, a business is always going to be a business no matter what. I'm not even like a partner yet. I've been affiliate the entire time. I don't stream nearly enough, and like I don't get like over 75 views per on average. I mean, if I stream like every day, if I had like a better setup like Bowman Dean, where like he has got amazing like reverb, and it's like that's incredible. And then there's like the regular streamers who do it like every day, and then it takes so much energy to do it every day. But yeah, I mean like the two things that I'm thinking about that I could do before I actually get a full-time job is like I would need to like get into Spotify, and that's probably another like like exploitive job, because I hear they pay like peanuts. The other thing is I need to update my books, and then I can like promote my books that way. Chapizel, how are you doing tonight? I wanted like if I haven't been like absolutely mind bogged down by like schoolwork, I would be working on the Ghosts of the Zombie Apocalypse right now, updating that because that is a fun, also like interesting book. And there's like other streaming ideas that I've been having, like like Lav is studying streams, but like I wanna make a game that you guys can play while I'm studying, because I'm not like actively entertaining. I'm just like hanging out. I want like something that you guys can be engaged in if I'm here. Like you get to like press a button and you can like change the music on your own, or right now I have a game idea where you're a ghost and you get to like navigate a maze, but you can't see the maze. So I'm trying to like break that down in my head, but like trying to find the time to like program that while I'm like doing everything else. So I mean like yeah, it's like a deviation, but it would be like more screen time. You can bug into Velicos. I mean, probably the quickest thing is to like throw a banana at another ghost. I could easily do that one. Just a random banana. It would just like stick to them. There'd be like no point. But like the more I want to like make a game, the more it has to be like intricated. Like you have to like make mechanics that work, and then you gotta like take the time to program them. And like the other thing is Game Maker Studio keeps updating their platform, so things like get what's the word, depreciated. They get phased out. So they've been updating things. So it's just like I don't want to deal with this right now. Because then you're like spending like 20 minutes updating to the new changes of the platform. But I could start reading one of my books. something I've been wanting to do. Let's see, what is the latest? Ghost of the Zombie Apocalypse. Thank you so much, Mr. Frog. Everyone appreciates you. Is this really the latest update? I feel like I did a better one. Oh, did a missed update. Extraterrestrial vibes. Okay, we're singing this one. Just because I'm feeling it. Thank you so much, ET-Vibes. How are you doing? Oh my goodness, talking about flies in my room. I've had like 2 tonight and a cricket. I captured the cricket and let it outside. But like, oh my goodness, the bugs in my room tonight have been insane. Oh, I was about to read something. Is this the one that I updated? It might be the one I updated. I need to like make this bigger. The world exploded into chaos. Gunshots echoed out as screaming cascaded through the city. The hearts of 2 men pounded feverishly in their ears as they fled from the horde raging behind them like a tidal wave of death. That bastard took a chunk out of me with his teeth. Billy, do you think he was contagious? Billy looked at Tom, glanced at his own flesh wound, and then at the massive growing crowd of pursuing zombies. Right. So, Tom, Billy said as he ran, I think we're both done for. Tom looked at Billy with a grin. Then there isn't a better person I'd want to go out with. Billy looked back at Tom and shared his grin. Last one to take out 100 buys the rounds. The two stopped and picked up some debris from the ground and gripped it, ready to attack the first undead body to reach them. Then I hope you can take your cash with you, 'cause I'm gonna be thirsty when I'm dead. 4 minutes later, Billy and Tom stopped screaming. They both got up from the ground and dusted themselves off. Well, that could have gone better, Billy said. How many did you get? Tom looked around at the carnage that was mostly of his body. 3, maybe 4, Tom said. I think I got 2.5, Billy said back. And a half. Yeah, you you see that one over there missing an arm and a leg? Oh, nice. The two stood there for a bit as they nonchalantly surveyed the zombie horde lurching away like a bad parade. Tom made a fidgety popping sound with his mouth. Billy blew out a stream of what used to count for air. Like someone with nothing better to do. So what now? Billy asked. I don't know. Did you ever hear Did I ever tell you about the time I went to Spain? Was that when the albino circus gypsy tried to steal your hair? No, that was another time. I don't think I told you about this one. Really? Oh look, our bodies are getting back up. Yeah, I knew I was a tougher bastard than that. You do know you're a zombie now, don't you, Tom? Yeah, I do. But look at how well my body held up to that onslaught. Ha! My skin's so tough it has got some of their teeth stuck in it. True, but you're missing a foot. That's right, look at how well I make do while walking on my stump like that. Tough as nails I was. Tom said solemnly. Well, that you were, Tom. That you were, Billy said sympathetically. The two watched their corpse take a few hesitant steps before getting taken up by the follow of the horde. Distant screams and gunshots still ring out among the moaning dead. Come on, Billy, I want to see how this turns out. Yes, me too, Billy said as he followed after his corpse. So what happened in Spain? Billy asked. Oh, you're gonna love this. It's about how I got this scar there, right there on my left hip, and why I scream every time I see a ventriloquist. So I get to the beach resort after a long flight when I decide to hit up the bar to recover. When I meet these 3 hot Spaniard little people strippers. And the prologue ends. Should I keep going with this story, you guys? It's not about Billy and Tom. Billy and Tom do show up again, but like the story is about Henrietta. Okay, so I should keep going. So the ghosts of the zombie apocalypse. Title appears on the screen. Goddamn overgrown cabbages, Henrietta moaned as her body tripped to the ground for the 3rd time. Honestly, you'd think I'd have an easier time at this. Come on, I used to run 5 miles a day. Now look at where that's got me. If I wasn't dead already, I would die of embarrassment. Oh, hi, Loretta. Hi, Henrietta. I see you're tripping over some cabbages today. Yeah, it's not been a good morning. How's Charles doing? Finally got free of that dog collar. Oh, good for him. Oh, God. Henry looked back to see her corpse had just slipped on another rotten cabbage and was now struggling feebly to get back up. Honestly, is this not the saddest thing you have ever seen all day? Henrietta asked. I don't know. I saw Fred wearing a dress earlier. What? How did that happen? Henrietta exclaimed. I don't know. He was very reluctant to talk about it. I'm sure he's thinking of just the right way to tell that story. I don't blame him. So, seen anyone new lately? Not so much. I heard some gunshots last night, but I think we lost more than we gained. Either way, we'll be getting that story in a few days. But most survivors now are either dug in or got out when they could. I suppose that's a good thing. But But if this story shortage goes on much longer... Yeah, I know what you mean, Loretta said in a huff. Well, it looks like you're getting away from yourself, Henrietta said as she gestured towards the oblivious zombie wandering away. Oh, shoot, really? Be sure to take care of yourself. To keep up with yourself, Loretta said as she began to speed away. And you too. See you along the grapevine. Henrietta watched as Loretta caught up with her corpse. Further down the road on the other side of the stone wall, separating the street from the garden. So we lost a few corpses last night, Henrietta thought to herself. That's... Hello, Elfrozone. Elfroz. How are you doing tonight? So we lost a few corpses last night, Henrietta thought to herself. That's gonna put a drag on our economy. I wonder who we lost. Hopefully not anyone interesting. But honestly, right now, I'd even listen to an old golf commentary. I'm doing really good, so been a busy week. I am currently reading a book I wrote. Oh my goodness, when did I write this? What page am I on? We're on page 10. Not really page 10. I wrote this 2015. I wrote this. And now I've lost my spot. Oh shit, really? So we lost a few corpses last night, Henry thought to herself. That's going to put a drag on our economy. I wonder who we lost. Hopefully not anyone interesting. But honestly, right now, I would even listen to old golf commentary. Oh, where do you think you're going? Henrietta said to her corpse as it managed to get back on its feet and somehow stumbled its way out of the garden. It felt good to not feel so embarrassed for her corpse anymore, despite the rotten coleslaw that now covered it. What are you laughing at? Which part? It felt like she was a parent who was watching their child nervously wet their pants in front of everyone during the piano recital. At least she get a good story out of it. Much like her mother did. Henrietta's corpse continued along the desolate streets as she followed closely behind herself in a city full of ghosts, deep in conversation. With one another as they walked persistently along with their living corpse. Oh, that's so nice. I'm just a dork as all. Like, I don't care about being a dork anymore. I mean, like, I've been a dork for so long. The accent is everything. I'm just doing that for fun. If I was doing it in a normal voice, I would absolutely give them like more feminine voices, because as Henriette is a big part of the story. Okay, so Billy and Tom are they're reoccurring characters in my books, but like they have like a very distinct accent that's kind of Irish mostly, and like I love how I write their language. It's a little bit of a twinge. It's straight, and I can't like quite do it, but like when you read it, you can hear the accent. So. Okay, we're enough. The ghosts deep in conversation with one another as they walked persistently along with their living corpse. I'm gonna like save this because I'm making small edits. I'll just put this on desktop. What year is it? This is 23, right? Yeah, it's 23. Okay. Like, I remember when, oh god, what was his name? Oh god, who's doing that? Like, he used to read the books all the time. And he doesn't do ASMR anymore. I don't know what he's doing. He had the mustache. He had the big mustache, and he was that big and on tea. No, like Godzilla or costume. Really, really early when I first started out, like he was always streaming. Frog, you should remember him. He had that buttery voice. And he would read like classics like Dracula. Costume. It was like a French sounding word, and he was like a voice actor. I think he got like a full job or something. That's why you don't see him streaming anymore. Or he's like changed. Well, I don't see him in my feed anymore, so I think he doesn't stream anymore. I mean, it's a lot of work to stream. Like costume. Anyways, let me get on to my story. Ghost Demon, a conversation with one another as they walked persistently along with their living corpse. This was, in fact, a city of zombies and their ghosts. No one really knew why other ghosts hung around their reanimated, decomposing corpses, or why they did it themselves. It just felt natural. Everyone knew they didn't have to, that they could leave and go somewhere else if they wanted, but that would mean that they would be lost. And when a ghost got lost, they would root themselves to the spot and not do anything but annoy the hell out of everyone else who passed by. Speak of the devil, Henrietta thought to her as she spied a lone ghost in an alleyway hovering over a corpse that was put down. Fallen zombie ghosts were the worst, and all they did was pester people for free stories like an awkward friend at a party. Now the important thing was not to make eye contact. Henrietta, is that you? Hey, Henrietta, over here. It's Richard. Shit. Well, at least I can ignore him if my corpse keeps going straight. Shit. No, don't go over there, Henrietta whispered to her corpse urgently as it turned into the alleyway. Okay, it'll be fine, cuz my corpse will just keep walking by and I won't have to talk to him very long. Just make a quick banter and we'll be through this in no time. Hey, Richard, Henrietta said awkwardly, overselling it. I'd love to stay and chat, but as you can see, my corpse... Henrietta paused mid-sentence as they both looked down at her corpse crouched down. Has stopped here to eat your corpse. So, heard any new stories lately? Richard said, not missing a beat. Only if you have something worth hearing. How about how I ended up stuck in this alleyway? Oh, come on, we all know how some kid popped you in the head as you were chasing him down. How did you hear that? No one's been down here since my corpse fell. The kid told me the other day. Charlie got him the day after he fell you, and it's old news, Richard. Come on, can't you give me something? It's dull as dirt down here. decide. Alright. This is turning out to be a pretty entertaining day. This moment alone is going to be worth a story worth hearing. So, Henry said as she tried to remember a good story, did I ever tell you of my piano recital when I was a kid? After about 20 minutes, 20 minutes of story time and some small gossip, Henrietta's corpse finished gorging itself and started to wander off. Henrietta politely left Richard, who was feeling happily entertained, and ventured back out into the streets with her corpse. After walking along for a while, Henrietta was beginning to feel vexed at giving such a good story for something that happened to both of them. Not many ghosts would have accepted that trade, but she felt sorry for him. It was hard not to. He was never going to have another chance to roam around and get any new stories from watching his corpse. At least, the lost could always hitch a ride on another corpse to find their own later on. Unlike a failed. Well, at least she got a good story from all that. She suspected that Richard wouldn't be telling that story to anyone else anytime soon. So as far as she was concerned, the story was as good as gold. The market always ate up the embarrassing and awkward stories. Those always got a laugh. And a little extra spice put in the next story you got told. It was funny. They didn't eat. At least not like how their corpses tried to eat everything. But not anyone could live without entertainment. But that shouldn't be too surprising. There really wasn't much to do anymore than talk to other ghosts about what they did in life and what weird things their corpses did. Which quickly led to only talking about the weird things the corpses did. The average person lived a normal, boring life and only had a handful of interesting stories that they would tell everyone over and over. When death came, most people exhausted most of the stories worth telling right away, which quickly led to talking about how dull and mindlessly stressful their former jobs were. This in turn led to story trading. Every story had a price, and it sometimes took a bunch of mediocre stories to hear a really good one. A corpse sneezed loudly next to Henrietta, making her jump. Sorry, HG. It's alright. Well, say, have you seen Lisa? I've been hoping I'd wander across her again. She had the prettiest smile and the best jokes. Sorry, Will. Haven't seen her for a week. That's okay, HG. Will said solemnly. I'm just dying to hear the end of her story. I traded one of my best stories to hear it, but she wandered off before she could finish hers. You mean the one about the cherries? Yeah. You know it. Can you fill me in, please? Sorry. I'm not going to do that story any justice. You just really need Lisa to tell it. Oh man, you just got me so excited. I can't wait to run into her again. Good luck, Will. Keep up with yourself, and you keep up with yourself, he said back with a smile as their corpses wandered away from one another. Keep up with yourself, Henrietta thought. That was a story in itself. The phrase, Henrietta remembered, was born out of necessity. Originally, ghosts would stop to talk to one another and then get so caught up in the conversation that they would lose track of their own corpse and become lost No one wanted that, especially because the last were so damned annoying. But more so because it terrified them so much that they could become lost themselves. So everyone looked out for everyone else and reminded them if their corpse was getting too far for comfort. This, of course, led to the fact that any story you were telling or listening to could be cut short at any time. Not for the first time, Henrietta wondered what ghosts said to one another before the zombie outbreak. Car, I am reading my book, The Ghosts of the Zombie Apocalypse. Can you eat me? No, don't eat me. So it's kind of like a Halloween like special, I guess. I'm not that far in. It's mostly like the beginning exposition. This is like page 14 of 128 pages. Halloween special. Yeah, I might keep this going. Like this is like I got brought on for like a special reason, so I thought I would do something special tonight. And it's not too far of something I've wanted to do anyways, because I wanted to read some of my books. Froggy is very special. Well, it's gonna be a VOD no matter what, so like, keep reading. So long story short, it's the ghost of the zombie apocalypse. The ghosts are following their zombified corpses, and they have an economy of stories, and they trade stories to hear other people's stories because like nobody has any imagination anymore. They just talk about what happened to them during their life and what they see their own corpse doing. And now that's your caught up. There is not a zombie. I wrote this in 2015, long before I met Frog. But I'm sure there are zombie frogs. There are zombie deer. Not for the first time, Henrietta wondered what ghosts said to one another before the zombie outbreak. It must have been completely different culture back before all this happened. Surprisingly, she was yet to meet any ghosts that died pre-zombie apocalypse. There must have been some around somewhere. I mean, ghosts can't possibly exist just because of zombies. Oh, the followage thing is broken for everybody. Like, I don't know what's wrong. It's something about Twitch. You can easily see how long you've been following me. Like, you gotta click your name, and then you can see when you started following me. No, he did not. Twitch broke it. Gunshots in the distance suddenly echoed out, breaking Henrietta out of her train of thought. There weren't many zombies in her street, but when they heard that loud noise, the few around her started steadily increasing the lurch towards the disturbance. That is, all of them except Henrietta's corpse. Henrietta had seen her corpse do this before after feeding. Her corpse was simply too full to care about eating anymore. Well, it looks like we're going to miss out on another raid, a familiar ghost said behind her. Yeah, Henrietta said without looking back. How are you doing, Charles? Could be better. I really needed this raid. I'm running out of good material. More gunshots began bursting out in rapid succession, somewhere out of sight. Looks like all the excitement started, Charles said. Yeah. A roaring cheer echoed out like a sports stadium going wild. Looks like we got one, Henrietta commented. Then as one, the cheer turned to a crestfallen ah. And then they were felled. Henrietta finished. Rotten luck, Charles commented. We could have used some new followers. We can't turn them all into followers. Also, we always lose some corpses to the raid. I know, but it'll make a good story later. Just wish I could afford it. More gunshots echoed out, followed by another crowding cheer. Yeah, there's another one, Charles said. The cheer turned into clapping. Hold on, I gotta do it proper. I think it's wrapping up, Henrietta said. These raids aren't lasting nearly as long as they used to. I think it's because the survivors are getting weaker. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's not like either of us lasted very long, am I right? Ha, trying to fish out for my swan song. I thought you just said you couldn't afford a raid story. Henrietta said slyly. Doesn't mean I don't still have my own swan song to tell. Well, I'll tell you yours. I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. No deal, I'm saving my death for something from the story master Mike. No! Is he here? Last I heard he was down in the old town. Heard it through the grapevine that someone spotted him down on 2nd Street. Oh, dang. That's just 3 streets away. I can't wait to run into him again. You've heard a story, Master Story. You've heard a story, Master Story. What was it like? What was he like? I've only heard rumors of rumors. Well, it will cost you. That story was really good. I mean, gossip strictly, of course. Oh, then, he had a good eye for detail. Yeah, I have heard that. He used to be a computer programmer or something. He seemed more like a high-class business smoocher to me. Really? What else can you tell me? Well, he really made the story flow together and quickly before your corpse wandered away. Ah, good. I hate cliffhangers. Oh, hey, Billy. Hey, Tom. Hey, Charles. Henrietta, did you catch that fight? Tom said, following his corpse out of a side street. No, we missed it, Henrietta said. Our corpses were too full for the fight. It's a shame. They'll be talking about that one for a while, Billy said. 'Twas a humdinger of a fight, 's right. Reminds me of the last swing I took at them corpses, Tom said. Ah, yes. Oh, yes, Charles said. You and Billy both tried to take on 50 with nothing but a plank in your smiles. We all know the story. You never shut up about it. Well, it was true, Tom said happily. Tom, do you remember that we can't make things up, right? Henry said. I just can't be sure with you two. Sometimes. Says right, we know that, Billy said. But you can't blame the man for being proud. Say, did we ever tell you of the time me and Tom raided the store of survivors? They gave us quite a fight, but we turned them to us in the end in no time. You did lose your left hand in the fight, though, Tom. It's true, but the battle scars are the best kind of trophy. Tom leaned in slyly towards Charles and Henrietta. The zombie chicks totally are digging my missing pieces. I am totally not reading chat. What's going on? What's going on, Raven? You couldn't bone a chick. Oh my goodness. I need to read ahead. Tom, you couldn't lay with a zombie chick unless she accidentally impaled you with her bone broken rib. Still counts in my book. Seriously, you guys don't understand the story economics at all, Charles said, both entertained and appalled by this spectacle. Relax, Charles, Tom said. Where did I leave off? I'm getting distracted. Relax, Charles, Tom said. Yeah, Billy said. We're underestimating them all right. We understand them all right. We just don't care, Tom said while grinning. You two are crazy. Well, we don't have to have an argument for that, Billy said. Oh, Henrietta, go and keep up with yourself, Tom said, looking over his shoulder. Wait, what? Oh, Henrietta said, looking around frantically. Over there, Billy said as he pointed to the corpse, going down a side alley. Thank you, guys. Keep up with yourself. Henrietta quickly caught up with her corpse before it got out of sight. Billy and Tom were definitely crazy in her book, but she liked them to no end. They were the only pair of corpses that stayed together after all this time. It was somehow nice that they always had each other for company. Maybe that's why they didn't care about the story currency. After a moment, Henrietta swore as she remembered the raids. She would have liked to ask Billy and Tom about them if only her stupid corpse hadn't wandered away. Well, things can't be helped now. It was just frustrating because now she probably won't even get a second-hand rendition of the events. Stories got so degraded every time they changed hands, up until it got so bad that they simply became gossip. But she had to admit that even that was still better than risking your corpse for the story. The raids were always high risk, high reward situations. The corpses at the front always ran the risk of getting felled. But if not, their ghost would be front row to the events, and the first to welcome the new followers, which was always a huge celebration. New people always meant new stories, and it always paid to be nice to the new guys. After surviving the apocalypse for so long, they always had some of the best stories to tell. Henrietta was never one of the lucky ones at the front. She always found herself in the middle to back of the crowd. Well, at least she could count her luck that her corpse was still in one piece and in remarkably good condition for being dead as long as she has been. She'd seen some corpses with only one arm and leg. Oh, I don't have that up. I'm sorry, I missed it. Car, don't drop your phone on your face. I'm just gonna check. Did anybody No, nobody's requested. Oh, somebody did request massage myself. I can do two things. Okay. I don't know what did you say? massaging myself because it was requested. Guys, if I don't I don't have the thing up, so I don't normally. I'm reading something, so I don't see the special requests. Say it in chat if you make one. Okay, Henrietta was never one of the lucky ones in front. She always found herself in the middle of the back of the crowd. Well, at least you could count her luck that her corpse was still in one piece and in remarkably good condition for being dead as long as she had been. She'd seen some corpses with one arm and leg. You can never just eat one chip. And I can't see the... Oh my goodness. I'm trying to read a story here. She says, remarkably good condition for his being as dead as long as she had been. She had seen some corpses with only one arm, and that was as good as being as fallen in most people's books. At least those ghosts got treated better. It scared her to no end that one day her corpse would be put down, and then she would be rooted to the spot like a sad houseplant begging for a free story. Henrietta stopped walking and leaned on a wall in an alley as she stared at her corpse as it tried to scrape a live beetle out from a crack in a brick wall. She then yawned as she began to zone out. Car, why do you want to throw yourself at a wall? Don't do that. What did that wall ever do to you? I really hope I don't lose you someday, Henrietta said to her corpse as she closed her eyes and went into autopilot. Two blocks away, a man was holding himself up in a building. Outside, the zombies moaned and lurched by his door, uninterested. Uninteresting was the best way to describe this man. He was short, kind of tall, with dark to light hair. No one ever took notice of him, which was how he was able to survive this long. Mainly it was because he kept out of everyone else's way. When panic struck the population, he stayed put and waited alone by himself, while the chaotic, irrational people rushed into the streets like lemmings diving into the wildfire of death and zombies. But it was easy for him to go unnoticed for so long because no one paid much attention to him even before the pandemic. He was just one of those people in the background. The only other person to know he had lived in that building was his mother, and only remembered because of special plaque that she had made with his name and address and the title, "Your son," hung conspicuously over the fireplace, where she would see it every day and say in a disbelief, "Oh yeah, I do have a son, don't I?" Some people are just born forgettable. He lived far across the country. To his benefit, the zombies didn't know he existed either. There was a request. What is the request? Like, I'm paying attention. To his benefit, the zombies didn't know he existed either. And at least hopefully not yet. The man survived off looting his neighborhood
Currently, he was trying to figure out how to pick a lock to one of his neighbor's doors. He grunted as he twisted the paperclip before making the door click. 15. Wood block.
Honestly, he thought to himself, who locks their door behind them in a panic to flee the city? The room was a mess. Clothes were thrown all over the place, as if someone packed up in a hurry. In the kitchen, a meal for 3 laid half-eaten and rotten. The pantry was mostly empty except for a box of cereal and some assortment of canned goods. After packing them up and cracking one of the cans open to have a quick lunch, he began to explore the rest of the place. Most of the drawers in the place were empty of anything useful except for a few batteries. On his way to the bathroom, to look for soap and medicine, the man slipped on a child's toy, sending him crashing through the window and down 3 stories, landing with a whomp on a pile of old clothes, discarded garbage on a rusty sofa. He moaned in pain, just as Henrietta's corpse walked next to it. He looked up, froze, as he saw the corpse stop and glance over at him. With a groan, the corpse turned back, uninterested, and began to continue on shuffling down the alleyway. Nothing else noticed the man as he struggled his way out of the pile of garbage. Nothing except Henrietta, that is. This disturbance had woken her out of her autopilot. She stood there with her mouth agape and at a loss of words. She didn't even pay attention as her corpse turned the next corner. What just happened before her ghostly eyes was something that no other ghost had ever talked about. Never had she seen her corpse turn down a helpless survivor. Sure, her corpse had eaten earlier, but never had it turned down anything when it was right in front of it. DJ Blitz, how you doing? Where'd I leave off? Oh my goodness. Do you want to name Dre's DJ Blitz, or am I just like to keep going with the story? But never had it turned down anything when it was right in front of it. A grin started to slowly form on Henrietta's face as the man feebly made his way along the alley. Without really thinking about it, she followed the man for a few steps before glancing back to see her corpse had gone on without her. Panic quickly set in as she glanced back the other way to the man who was almost gone. Panic quickly turned into hysteria. Henrietta had never lost her corpse before, and what made it worse was she was hesitating to find it. She had heard stories about the hesitation that a ghost gets when they get lost. It was as bad as being fallen ghost, but with the hope that somewhere out, there was her corpse to reunite with. That apostrophe is weird. But somehow, this didn't feel like that kind of hesitation. In one direction was her corpse, but in the other was something else. She couldn't think in terms of something else. She could not
think in terms of something else. There had never been something else for any ghost for as long as she could remember being dead. But now that something else was gone, and so was her corpse, and she had no idea what to do anymore. Tragically, Henrietta was now lost. She sat down on the pile of trash the man crawled out of, completely at a loss for what to do. She thought more about the stories from the other ghosts. Others about ghosts who had lost their corpses. It was bad. It sounded as bad as being single without cats. But at least some are able to catch up quickly with their corpse, while others... Anyways, the point was just don't stay put till someone comes along. The point was to just stay put. Stay put until somebody comes along. Don't go wandering anywhere. I just hope I have enough to pay someone for a hitch, Henrietta thought. Henrietta looked down at the alley, then looked down the other way. There was a lot of clutter here. It seemed like this alley didn't get a lot of zombie traffic. She began to feel tragically rooted. It was often thought that a ghost would stay rooted to a spot for the same reason they couldn't make up new stories. There was something about death that just killed your imagination. Unfortunately, she heard somewhere that you had to have some imagination to make decisions. Just imagining decisions like, so which way do I go now, could give a ghost a bad headache and quite often nightmares if they didn't have their corpse with them. At least that's what everyone else said the lost feel like. Things get garbled in translation after it's been told so many times, and she never met someone lost and found before. But surely some make it back to the corpse, or else no one would be talking about it, right? Henrietta shivered as paranoid fear started to set in. I really need to start thinking of something else. Henrietta surveyed the alleyway again. Just got to stay put, she thought, trying not to panic. Henrietta sat and stared at the brick wall. What else was there to do? The building to Henrietta's back suddenly exploded, sending rubble cascading into the alleyway and the surrounding streets, burying her along with everything else underneath a ton of debris. Henrietta sighed as she drifted up through the rubble. She sat down on top of the pile and surveyed the carnage. She wasn't surprised. This sometimes happened with abandoned buildings that were left unattended and had unmaintained gas lines, boilers, and nowadays homemade explosives and napalm left by the scavenging survivors. There was something about the apocalypse that made everything so damned accident-prone. No other ghost came out from the debris, so it must have been completely abandoned by survivors and corpses. She pouted to herself. She could see a bit further now, and no other ghosts were close by. On top of that, the rubble now made it impossible for anything to cross her path. This weird day was beginning to really frustrate her. Some movement in the distance caught Henrietta's attention. Well, there was that weird man again, she thought absent-mindedly, as she watched him climb out of a hole in the adjacent building. Casually, he brushed the dust off him. It wasn't particularly interesting, but she kept watching him like a bored person taking a mild interest in the bug crawling along their wall. The man had clambered his way to the top of the pile of debris where Henrietta was sitting when the building he had just climbed out of exploded as well, knocking him over and threw Henrietta while she watched a cylinder blast out from the building and a trail of cloud of steam behind it high into the sky. More rubble piled up everywhere as Henrietta drifted to the top of the pile again. Movement caught her eye when the man stood up out of a protective pocket that he happened to fall into moments before he staggered a few uneasy steps, just as the water boiler crashed down to where he had just been standing. She giggled. She hadn't giggled since she heard the one about the leprechaun in the horse's blouse. And that was a long time ago. Quickly, the man picked himself up and made his way down the rubble in a hurry. Henrietta blankly watched him as he tripped and slid his way down when she shrugged with a and got up to follow him. To her surprise, no corpses had come to investigate the explosion. They did tend to get more attracted to faint noises more than the louder ones. Henrietta thought as she followed close behind them. It must have been because the faint noises tend to mean food, as where louder ones meant trouble. Corpses could handle bullets, so long as they weren't headshots, but they were useless against explosions. Her corpse may be dead, but somewhere in that decaying skull of her former habitation was a thin sense of survival instinct. None of the other ghosts talked much about what their corpses did. Well, other than the big things. They would tell stories about how their corpse would overcome some survivors, obstacles, or about how many people they brought down and introduced to the community. Oddly, it was kind of like Valhalla. The survivors fought like brave or terrified warriors to the last breath, and when they returned, they were greeted by a crowd of cheering faces welcoming to the odd afterlife this was. Resentment by the newly deceased didn't last long when they were greeted like that, besides. The worst had already happened, being dead and all. There wasn't any reason to retaliate or punish a ghost for what their corpse had done, especially when they realized that everyone on the side was just a spectator to the dramedy of the formal apocalypse life. But Henrietta did pay attention to what her corpse did, almost to a fault. There was so much more going on behind those dead eyes that most would have noticed. She didn't think much of it, though, nor did she go into detail with the others about it, except for the funny things they did. Those always got a laugh when she set them upright. The weird man made his way uneventfully through the city, completely devoid of wandering corpses, which struck Henrietta as odd, especially because he didn't move stealthily in the least. Honestly, he walked like a drunken elephant trying to tiptoe through the china shop. So many things broke, tinkled, or clanged by accident as he made his way through the side streets. The only thing that noticed him other than her was that bird that flew into him, as if he wasn't there at all. Henrietta was starting to feel a bit sorry for the man. Henrietta was starting to feel a bit sorry for the man. He seemed to be living in a world that never noticed him. Eventually, he arrived at what she assumed was his safe house. After navigating a tricky doorway, he made his way in while Henrietta floated through all the obstacles without effort. The safe room the man had obviously built over time looked as ignored as he was. It was unkept, even by the apocalypse standards. One might think that there should at least be a room to put your feet on the actual floor, but somehow he ignored that fact again. To her surprise, walked through it like a... But somehow, he ignored that fact again. To her surprise, walked through it like a fish swam through water. The effect made you feel a little disoriented after you saw it. It was as if he had a little bit of ghost in him as he passed through dimensions that weren't not meant to normally yield. Henrietta sat atop the mess and watched him dismissively, with dismissive interest. She couldn't understand why her interest was so underwhelmed. Because the things that this man did in the last hour, or more what happened to him, would have easily gotten her a story from the Storymaster Mike. It felt like she was only really paying attention to him because she really didn't have anything better to do. But honestly, how enthusiastic should someone feel when they watch a person cook themselves a meal? She then giggled as the man caught fire to his sleeve on the alcohol stove, at which point he spilled his drink on him, dousing the flame while never realizing that he was burning in the first place. This is when Henrietta became psychological. She meant philosophical. Clearly, he must know that all this is going on, right? He can't be so ignorant that he's unable to pay attention to the danger he's in. Or is he so ignorant that the danger just ignores him like an afterthought? Is that even possible? It was then that the man began to smell his burnt fabric. He looked down at his sopping wet sleeve and sighed. Henrietta then felt bad for being cynical. Henrietta wasn't always the best at knowing the right words to use, even when she was alive. Clearly the man had some deep pain about whatever this was. The man then finished his meal and laid down on the mess. Nothing actually happened for the rest of the day. He just laid there staring at the ceiling, breathing peacefully. Henrietta found herself enjoying it immensely. Her corpse breathed much, nor looked peaceful. Her corpse never breathed much, nor looked peaceful, and every survivor she had seen since death had the look of terror on their face. It wasn't the first time in a while she really got to watch anything else. It was the first time in a while she really got to watch anything else. Oh my goodness, these sentences. Even with this odd sensation of passive interest, it was nice change of pace. The night started settling in as the thin slivers of light, seeping through the boarded up windows, started to fade. Henry looked up from her absent-minded gaze and went to poke her head out the window. Dusk was her favorite time of day, when vibrant colors erupted through the sky and then exploded into a million brilliant stars. Henrietta let herself float to the roof of the building for a better look. Since the city's power went out, she couldn't remember a time when the night sky looked so open and bright. It was funny how the total collapse of civilization made the world appear as such a beautiful place. Aside from all the death, decay, and dilapidation of everything. Everywhere, of course, but the dead can't be choosers in this regard. That kind of thing was for the living. Besides, the crescent moon, the main blood of the main bloom of the stars cascaded down over the city like a soft blanket as the crickets disturbed the corpses throughout the city who replied with their moans. The sound of something that sprang open caught Henrietta's attention. She turned to see what it was. The man emerged from a hatch and unknowingly sat beside her on the roof. He sighed as he silently stared out at the twilight of the sky. If a ghost could blush, she would have. It wasn't about attraction, but honestly, the man looked like a dreadful foot after surviving this long in the apocalypse. She looked like a disfigured foot. It was more about the company. She rather liked that he was quiet. All the other ghosts were pleasant company, but to a fault. They were all friendly and very talkative, but they were extremely bored. And the story economy took its toll on everyone. Whenever she saw two ghosts together, they would always be gossiping, retelling second-hand stories. How you doing, immortal Marshy? Retelling second-hand stories, or just filling up all the air between them with as many words as they could before their corpses would wander away from each other and cut the conversation short. She realized that she never saw any pairs of ghosts just sitting and gazing quietly with one another like she was now. But she never saw Billy and Tom when they were alone. She imagined that they did stuff like this all the time. It kind of hit her somewhere that she didn't know she could be hit. It hit her somewhere that she didn't know that she could be hit. The two of them sat, Henrietta and the man, for some time side by side, just watching the stars twinkle. Eventually the man began a really long yawn before getting back up to go inside. Henrietta elected to stay on the roof. As she looked out over the city, she heard the latch behind her shut shortly, followed by the trumpeting of him crashing noisily down the stairs. She smiled inwardly at the outburst. Never had she realized that she could do that until now. She only smiled with her face. It came as a mild, delightful surprise, like being wrapped in an unexpected soft blanket after a really long day. Ghosts don't sleep. At least not how people understand sleep. The same goes for corpses. At some time or other, everything needs a moment of rest or recovery. Henrietta drifted off to sleep on top of the roof. It was kind of like getting lost in a sea of static shocks, but without pain or discomfort. Imagine getting massaged by gentle lightning as you sort of felt coherently incoherent. Can you imagine all that? Good. Now forget all of that, because it's nothing, not a thing like that at all. Sometimes things are just too much for words to describe. It's just one of those things that need to be experienced before anyone could understand it. It's not uncommon for ghosts to dream in this kind of state. But due to the nature of death, the dreams aren't exactly what you would call dreams. It's more like sensations of phantom body. Like phantom limb, where you get to experience sensations that a severed limb is still there, but for the entire body. There is a thing where people dreaming often feel like they're ghosts, where they can fly and walk through walls. Well, when a ghost dreams, it's like they have a physical body that respects gravity and the solidity of matter. It's just another one of those things that they don't know why it happens. If they had creativity to figure out problems, they would probably leave that one up to the ghost Stephen Hawking's to figure out. Currently, Henrietta was dreaming that she was a middle-aged fat man eating a block of cheese on a couch. Well, that was a new experience, she dreamily thought. After finishing the second block of cheese and starting on the third, she woke up to find herself on autopilot, in the middle of the city, following that weird man. It was well after daybreak, and she was feeling plenty confused. Autopilot was an important thing about ghosts. If they didn't have it, every ghost would wake up and would be frustratingly spend their entire day, every day, chasing up to their corpse. Henrietta was used to her autopilot following her corpse, but she never heard of it following someone else's corpse. For that matter, she never heard of anyone talk of a ghost following a survivor around. She had no idea what was going on. After getting some orientation of where she was, she looked back at the man and saw him eating a block of cheese. How far am I going to take this? Henrietta thought as she tried to forget her dream. I should be trying to get back to my corpse. The only trouble with that is there aren't any other corpses around to hitch a ride from. This man appeared to be superficially trouble magnet based on everything that happened yesterday. So where was all the trouble for him to miraculously avoid? A noise from above drew Henrietta's attention to the sky. There were a few airplanes in the sky. She hadn't seen an airplane fly in the sky since she had died. Something big was going down. No, really, something big was coming down, and then it landed. The whole world exploded into fire. Henrietta didn't know what it would look like from the inside of a blast of an atomic bomb, but if she could imagine what it would be like, it might have been something like that. Waves of flame, ash, and wind threw debris around and through her. She sat comfortably in the air as the wood blindingly burned down and towers of spiraling flame shot up into the sky. After about 10 minutes of that, the world started to merely resemble hell. Noise from below Henrietta caught her attention. Bullshit, Henrietta said as she saw the man crawl out of the rubble covered manhole. He looked around at the hellscape for a second, then ducked back into the hole. Now this I gotta see. Henrietta flew through the ground to find the man, cowering in the dark sewer. She wondered how much longer he had to live with all the radiation around. But he hadn't been around when the bomb went off. Does that really matter? Radiation is radiation after all.
You're very welcome, Frog.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to read this. This is like page 30 of 128. There's no way I'm going to read all this tonight. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Did you go to my YouTube? To train. So, if you go to my, I would have to look up the exact video. Yeah, outdoor adventures. Oh, you found the playlist? Okay. Those two videos are very good. They're not like a full thing on hiking, but they're a good introduction. And like, I tagged each section so you can go to different ones. The other one's more like a cautionary tale that's just fun to talk about. Okay, where did I leave off? Are you guys enjoying the story, or do you want me to actually do some ASMR? Or play music? Before I get back into it. You want more story? Okay, I do need to go to the bathroom, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom really quick, and then I'll do more story time. Future Frog wants the lore. Well, this is the first book of actually two books. The second book needs a lot of work because I wrote it when I was like super depressed, and I was like, it devolved into an anime. I don't want to say which anime, but it was before I had had known that anime exists. Okay. If I'm gonna do more story time, like more story streams, I'm gonna need to get that tea. That's good for my throat. Oh. Okay. Where did I leave off? Okay. Henrietta flew through the ground to find the man cowering in the dock seward. She wondered how much longer he had to live with all the radiation around, but he hadn't been around when the bomb fell. Does that really matter? Radiation is radiation after all. He may have been alive now, but that doesn't mean he will be for much longer. Good God, Henrietta thought. Why am I really this interested in how this man will die? Oh no. What about all those corpses above ground? Oh, Margaret's going to be so pissed if she loses her corpse that way. What about my corpse? Wait, does that man really have several snakes on him? He has several snakes on him? When did that happen? Several snakes were in fact entwined loosely around his limbs. But they didn't seem to be trying to constrict him in any way. They seemed to be treating him as some kind of moving tree or something before they slithered off him, rattling their tails. Okay. What does it take to kill this man? And where did these rattlesnakes come from in a sewer? What the hell is going on here? Suddenly the man stopped for two reasons. First, he was blind and feeling his way through the sewer when he tripped and fell into something squishy. Second, a low moaning started to fill the air. Then another moan joined. The first, then another. Then another moan joined the first, then another. A chorus of moans began echoing throughout the sewer. The man lay frozen in a pile of filth as the horde closed in on his location. So this was it. This was how he was going to die. It had to be. Nobody was that unluckily lucky. For some reason, that made Henrietta sad. This man had come out like a fantasy of slapstick in the dull, repetitive world, tore Henrietta away from her corpse, and had been the best quiet company she had ever enjoyed. When those corpses turned him into a ghost, she was totally going to give him the best welcome she had ever given anyone. But that didn't feel right somehow. She rather liked him being alive. Henrietta felt helpless and lost, and not entirely understanding why, as the horde approached and walked right past him. Her jaw dropped. He was completely invisible to them. This blew her mind because she had seen several corpses chase after the sound of bugs and rats. The horde quickly wandered on as the moans died down in the distance. And as the moans faded away, she heard another soft sound. The man was crying. And that it seemed she had a silent audience. And it seemed she had a silent audience. A crowd of ghosts was watching her watch him. Henrietta, Tom said, "What's how you doing here?" I don't know, Henrietta said. "Where's your corpse?" Lucy asked. It got lost. I lost it somewhere yesterday. What about yours? Where's Billy? "Well, we all got disoriented in the blast," Tom said, shaken. "Some of us lost our corpses to the fire." "So sorry to hear that, Tom. So, whose corpses were those?" "We don't know. We're trying to catch up to them when we found you and..." "What is that?" Tom said. Henry looked to where Tom was indicating and saw the man curled up into a ball of whimpering. Oh, he's some guy that can't seem to die. He looks pretty dead to me, Lucy said. What are you talking about? He's clearly a survivor, Henry said, cutting herself off short as she looked at him. No, Henry said in disbelief. He's not dead. I watched him eat cheese and put out a fire. There's no way he's dead. Hey, I just call him like I see him. He's just another ghostless corpse. It's not like we all haven't seen any of them before. He's a ghost. His ghost must have gotten lost somewhere. No, I'd have noticed that. Whatever. Nothing's really matters anymore, anyways. We're not going to catch up to the others or something. Coming, Tom said, a little uncertain about what to say to her. No, I kind of want to see how this turns out, Henrietta said. Keep up with yourself. Suit yourself. Come on, fellas. The group of ghosts quickly left Henrietta to follow after the zombie horde. She quietly sat next to the man and looked at him closely. He didn't look dead to her, just insignificant. Maybe a bit pathetic, but definitely not dead. The man eventually stood up, wiped away his tears, made his way in the opposite direction of the horde. Henrietta followed closely behind him. That was starting to really grate on her nerves. She still had, a very real chance to rejoin the others and maybe find her corpse. But she chose not to. She was beginning to wonder if curiosity alone was the reason she kept following the man. But deep down, she knew it was because Lucy said he was already dead and she wanted to know why. They continued along the sewer as manhole cover from above lit up the way with a halo of burning bright blue flames. Eventually, they reached the dark, dead end. Frustrated, the man sat down heavily, exhausted. The sewers were eerily quiet, with only the sound of his breathing and the occasional faraway drip. Crackling the noises from above suddenly caught a cracking noise from above suddenly caught their attention and began to echo loudly around them. When the ceiling suddenly gave way, letting a bus fall through and slammed heavily into the wall just above the man's head, narrowly missing him by inches. Henrietta was beginning to suspect that the world was not, in fact, ignoring this man, but was more actively trying to kill him. That concept didn't really make sense, but surely the things that happened around him were more than just coincidence. Sure, all those things that had happened were understandable things to happen due to the current circumstances, but just how could this man still be moving after all that, dead or not? Thinking about that kinda made her head hurt. The man carefully climbed out from under the bus and made his way above ground. Apparently, this part of the city was not on fire for some reason. But he was still a smoldering wreck of rubble and debris. The man looked around as he stood out in the fresh air and took a deep breath. just beyond a nearby knocked down building, the glow of fire illuminated the deafening, dark, cloudy sky as the billowing smoke and embers climbed up high to block out the sun. Ash crumpled gently under the man's footsteps like snow as it fell gently from the sky. It was beautiful. Henrietta closed her eyes and pretended that it was winter, with a bright orange sunset on the horizon as she walked gleefully through some ancient ruin of lost, forgotten civilization. When she opened them again, the man was standing still at the edge of the city. The man sighed with relief as he crossed over the threshold of the city border and into the blanket of open fields. As he fell flat on his face, it looked as though he had tripped by accident, but when Harry looked down at him, he was hugging the ground happily. For the rest of the day, the man walked steadily away from the city toward the mountain range. In the distance, surprisingly enough, there was a large lack of things trying to kill him out in a field. Well, there was that landslide that sent him sliding down into a raging river full of rapids, which threw him out on the other side, just as wild dogs started barking at him from the opposite bank, where he fell in. After watching that kind of thing happen all day, Henrietta was beginning to feel kind of desensitized. Watching this man dodge mind-blowing danger by happenstance lost its thrill when you finally accept that he wasn't going to die by any normal means. Invulnerability really had a way of killing the fun of the danger when there wasn't any real consequence. It wasn't that she wanted him to die now, it was more she was just exhausted from being on the edge of her seat, that he might die at any time. It was like watching daredevils do mind-blowing stunts all day without incident. She understood that the stunt is supposed to go off without a hitch. But the thrill of it all depended on the illusion that everything could go very wrong at any time. That's what made danger exciting. As the sun was setting behind the ash-swollen world, Henrietta found that they had made it all the way to the middle of the forest. The man looked exhausted from all the walking and surviving he had to do today. She had to admit that she was beginning to admire his resilience, especially for being the most uninteresting man in the zombie apocalypse. As a ghost that tells and listens to stories for her entire afterlife so far, the only real story they really had left to tell was their own experiences. Henrietta reasoned that if this man could ever find anyone to talk to, he would be crazy interesting simply for surviving this long, even before he got into surviving all the crazy stuff that had happened. All the crazy stuff he had been through. Oddly enough, she was suspecting that the universe was making up for his lack of personality by dumping every experience on him all at once. The universe was starting to appear weird like that. In the twilight of dusk, the man stumbled his way over some roots to a nook in a nearby tree. He then lay down comfortably in it and closed his eyes. Henrietta sat there, watching him until he fell asleep. There weren't any stars out tonight due to the ashen cloud cover, So she got up and started to walk around the forest. It was then she realized that the city wasn't hit by a nuke. This forest wasn't that far from the city. If it had been a nuke, these trees would have been splinters. That realization just made her ask the question, who would want to firebomb a city this late in the apocalypse? Henrietta floated up above the tree canopy and sat in the branches as she looked out and watched the city burn. The city's flames had died down to a softer orange glow. It felt strange to watch it burn down to the ground. She had spent most of her adult life and all of her death in that city. She was very attached to the city, but part of her was also glad to see it gone. It was a feeling that she didn't know she had. Death was weird. Henrietta sat all night, staring out at the orange cityscape until the sun began to peek its head over the horizon. She began to yawn as she stretched her arms purely out of habit before she descended to the forest floor, landing with a thump that made the ash and leaves scatter around her as she began to look around for the tree that she had left the man at last night. When she quickly spotted the tree, she found the man still asleep where she had left him. He looked so peaceful as he slept, curled up into a ball like an adorable soot-covered puppy. With the man clearly still exhausted from yesterday's exploit, Henrietta decided to go look around. The forest was green and lush with ferns and moss. After a bit of wandering, she found a flock of deer. As she approached them, they looked up and bolted away as if spooked by her. Well, that's something new, she said aloud. As Henrietta wandered around some more, it became apparent that the forest felt so alive, more so than she could think a forest would normally be. It may have been her ghost eyes messing with her, but everything had such a healthy, radiant glow about them. Up in the distance, she spied a lone cabin. It stood out, but only so much. It really looked like just another part of the forest. Making her way over to the cabin, Henrietta felt full of curiosity. It was small and charmingly covered in moss. As she stepped up to the front door, it burst open as a gunshot bursted out through it, instantly striking the man behind her, who she thought was still asleep at the tree. Somehow, he had noiselessly made his way up here, which unsettled her just as much as it did to see him get shot. As he fell to the ground, a curmudgeonly old woman came out holding her shotgun at the ready. She kept it trained on the fallen man as she cocked it, sending a spent, smoking shell bouncing away. "Oh my God!" Henrietta shouted out of shock. "Why did you do that? He was still alive." "Really?" The woman said with more youth in her voice than Henrietta expected. "He looked pretty dead to me." She went over and nudged him with her boot. "Looks even more so now." Henrietta stared dumbfounded at the woman as she paintedly glared back at her with one eye while the other one watched the fallen man with like a hawk. "Well," the old woman said, "aren't you gonna say something? Every day you get a response now, don't you? At least not from the likes of me, anyhow." "Lady," Henrietta said flatly after the shock passed, after the yesterday I had following this man. Not a lot is going to surprise me today. The lady grinned at her before she cackled. It was a proper cackle, too. The man started to moan, which made her re-aim her shotgun in with purpose. He's not dead, Henrietta said. I'll bet anything on that. A bit special, is he? The lady said, not taking his eye off the man for a second. Survived 2 building explosions, a firebombing, and accidentally forged a high river through some bad rapids, and no zombie pays attention to him. Sounds dead enough to me, the lady said, ready to fire the... And cries to himself. The lady hesitated. She was looking a lot less old now and a lot more ladylike. Ah, hell, she said, lowering her gun. You better come inside while I fix him up. The lady went inside and shut the door tightly as Henrietta followed her through it. The cabin was neat, clean, with a lot of assorted things hanging on the walls. A good portion of it was covered with strung up drying herbs. My name is Mist, Mist said as she grabs an assortment of herbs from the wall. Invincible your man is he? Not in the normal sense, but yes. It's that, or he's one crazy indestructible zombie who likes to gaze out at the stars and sleeps sheltered from the wind. That doesn't mean he hasn't turned in between now and then, you know. Tricky thing, zombieism. By the way, where is your corpse? I only ever seen the ghosts following their own flesh nowadays. I sort of lost track of where... I lost track of it. When he fell out of a window and distracted me, Henrietta said as she looked and felt embarrassed by this. Mist gave her a long, glaring look. So it seems, Mist said, making it sound like she meant a lot more than the sum of the words. Anyways, here, hold this. Mist handed Henrietta a bowl and then suddenly let go of it. Henry leapt out to catch it before it flew through her fingers, and as if they weren't even there, which technically they weren't. The bowl bounced on the ground while a series of emotions crossed Henrietta's face, mainly bewilderment, shock, irritation, embarrassment, and most importantly, surprise that she tried to catch it. Miss just stood there studying her. Henrietta looked up at Mist, annoyed. You know I'm dead, don't you? Cool Collector, how you doing? What do you want to listen to? Is it gonna be... Oh my goodness, are you like into the foam tapping? I came on as a special request. And I've been reading a book I wrote back in 2015. So that's what I've been doing the last few hours. Let me know if anybody needs a recap. I know I'm not normally on. Someone needed me to be on to help them get to sleep. Someone not feeling very well. Henrietta looked up at Mist, annoyed. You know I'm dead, don't you? Mist glared at Henrietta just a second longer than what she felt comfortable. Doesn't it tell you how long I've been on? I have a command for that too, I think. I've been on for 2 hours. And this is like a Halloween special with me reading this book. So it's about, right now, the book's name is The Ghost of the Zombie Apocalypse. And the story is Henrietta follows around her corpse. And then she lost track of her corpse. And then she started following around this guy. And this guy, has the best luck. Worst luck. Like, he's not lucky, but he, survives everything. So, he's lucky in that regard. And now and then they found this woman in the cabin that can see ghosts. And that's where we are at right now. That's the full recap. Mist glared at Henrietta just a second longer than what she felt comfortable. Sorry about that. It must have slipped in my mind with me being so old and alone out here. Nothing to worry about though, the bowl was empty. Mist picked up the bowl and put some herbs in it when she began to meticulously grind them up. So, when did you die? Mist said conversationally. It was 4 months now, I think. Bad death, was it? I thought it was, until I saw 100 more like it. It happened before I knew about the outbreak. It was before any of us knew. I mean, me and my friends, we were out jogging when we were overrun. Some of us were run over by cars trying to escape, and we tried to outrun all of them. Henrietta said as she stared at her feet. You never talk about it to anyone else, have you? It wasn't a question. Henrietta shook her head no. The other ghosts and I, we don't talk about our own deaths much. We save our swan song for when we get desperate. Mostly we focus on other stories, like ones about the survivors your corpses kill. Yeah, like those, Henrietta said, and then she felt put on the spot. Oddly, she felt responsible for what her corpse's actions for the first time. She felt responsible for her corpse's actions for the first time ever. Don't look like that. No one can blame you for what your disembodied animated corpses does with its free time. Henrietta looked a little relieved. But I can blame you for taking pride in what it does. Really, you all should be ashamed. Well, it's not like we can make up our own stories now, can we? Henrietta said defensively. She felt ashamed and angry that this woman was pointing out her secret shame. Is that what you think? Goodness gracious. What? Nothing. Here, smell this. It smells like peppermint. Really? Needs more rosemary then. No, don't change the subject. Go back to what you meant. Oh, you mean what about how the ghosts are made? Well, when one ghost loves another very much... What? No, Henrietta interrupted. No, I mean about the... Wait, what? How are ghosts made? What? Whatever... What? What? Just... Well, go have a nap and I'll tend to your totally not dead friend outside. There's a nice ghost bed in the attic that you can rest in. What? That sounds nice. How did you... Make a ghost bed. Miss took Henrietta gently by her ghost arm and led her upstairs. You make it out of spirit wood and moth silk cloth. That can't possibly be a real thing, Henrietta sleepily said skeptically. It's not, but it makes a good lie, Miss said, bringing her to a small hand-carved wooden cot. Plush, white sheets covered the mattress and looked invitingly soft as Mist helped Henrietta lay down on it. Sleep tight, Miss said motherly before she left the room. Henrietta closed her eyes as the world went electric. She felt ghostly and light, even more so than normal. A nice, thick, sweet scent hung in the air all around her and made her head feel soft. It was so thick and tangible. It felt like a soft ethereal blanket on her gentle, ghostly skin. When Henrietta woke, she was still in the small cot. She looked closely at the wood to see that it was carved in beautiful etched carvings. It was covered in beautiful etched carvings. Over on some other bed next to hers was the man she had been following, lying unconscious and covered in bandages. She then tried to get up and found it was a little difficult. After the third try, she managed to sit up and get to her feet. A noise from downstairs made her float through the floor to find the old lady sitting at the table drinking some tea. Good afternoon. I see you slept well. Care for some tea? I'm dead. We don't really eat. Smart as ever, as I see. Well, I can safely assume you haven't spent much time in Thailand. They build these spirit houses, a place food and drink out for the spirits all the time. Henrietta looked blankly at Mist, and mainly out of bewilderment. Come over and have a cup anyways. It'll make you feel better. Henrietta reluctantly came over and sat down at the table. Mist poured her a cup and set it down in front of her. Henrietta stared at the cup on the table for a minute before giving Mist a questioning look. How do I... Henrietta said, confused. Simply just enjoy it. You're made of the same stuff as the tea. How does that work? Is it ghost tea? All tea is ghost tea, or rather it can be. Trust your instincts. You didn't need lessons on how to eat when you were at a corporeal body. This body is a lot like your last. Just different. Still confused, Henrietta leaned over her cup and sniffed the tea. It was sweet and bitter. She wasn't much of a tea person when she was alive, and wouldn't know what good tea would have been like. But sitting here, smelling this tea in front of her, made her wish she had tried more tea when she was alive. A crash from upstairs made the teacup jingle. Henrietta sighed at what she assumed was the man getting out of the bed, and absentmindedly leaned in and took a sip of the steam. Surprised by her actions, she sat bolt upright as she tried to process the sensation. The experience was disturbing, yet intriguing. For starters, it didn't involve her mouth on it at all. How did you like it? Mist asked. Henrietta stared down at the steaming tea in her cup for a bit longer before looking up at Mist. I'm bored, Henrietta said flatly. Well, I didn't think it was all that bad, Miss said before she noticed Henrietta's expression. If ghosts could cry, that's what it would have looked like. Miss calmly closed her mouth in mid-sentence and turned her seat as she politely crossed her arms on the table and sat waiting patiently. I just didn't realize, Henrietta stuttered. It really is good. The tea, I mean. Thank you. Mist quietly held her relaxed, patient gaze. I hadn't had anything to eat in so long, Henrietta said, looking back down at her cup. If you can call that eating. An explosion of noise that sounded like an elephant falling down the stairs onto a flock of geese broke Henrietta's awkward bewilderment. The man had fallen down the stairs and was getting up when Miss Drew cocked and aimed her shotgun at the man with lightning speed. The man hesitated halfway to standing as his gaze met with the barrel staring him down. Heavy tension filled the air between the two of them while Henrietta stared at the spectacle speechless. There is bread and water at the end of the table for you, Mist eventually said without flinching her rock-steady aim for a second. Slowly, the man carefully stood up and limped his way over to the end of the table where he struggled to pull out a chair with a groan and sat down. All while Mist's aim stayed locked on him. He then picked up a crust of bread and feebly started to raise it to take a bite when Mist interrupted him. You best make an offering of some of that bread to your guardian angel sitting there if you know what's good for you, Mist commanded. The man looked up at Mist through his bloodshot eyes and the bandages wrapped loosely around his head. I don't care if you think I'm crazy or not, but if it weren't for her, you'd be just another dead husk full of more holes than you already had, drying out in the sun. She's as close to a prayer as you're gonna get out here, so play it nice. Just a piece will do. With the reluctance of a hungry man disoriented from injury and fatigue, the man broke off a piece of the bread and placed it next to the teacup that Mist indicated with her eyes. Good. Now eat up, and then go back upstairs if you can. Rest is what you need right now, and you are useless to me and you without it. Are we clear? The man painfully grunted a nod. He ate his bread and water before straining himself to stand up and slowly limp his way back upstairs. As soon as the man was out of sight, a crash of pans erupted from upstairs, followed by the sound of a rubber duck squeaking. I don't understand it, Miss said to herself as she lowered her shotgun. All the pans are in the kitchen, and I don't even own a rubber duck. What was that all about? I paid attention to that one. What was that all about? Henrietta asked. I can't eat bread. Are you guys enjoying the story? Does anybody need a recap? Okay. What was that all about? Henrietta asked. I can't eat bread. You didn't know you could drink tea a minute ago. Besides, I wanted him to learn some manners in my house. Why are you doing all this to him? Or for me, for that matter? Because, Miss said as a matter of fact. Because? Yeah, just because. Henrietta sat awkwardly silently for a moment. Who are you? I'm Mr. Dear. I already introduced myself. Now come along. I could use some help in the garden. Henrietta laughed. What could I help you with? You're bored, right? Come along. Henrietta shrugged, followed Mist outside to a nice-sized, lush garden. So what do you need me to do? Henrietta said. Why don't you go and explore for a bit? But you just said, I know I did, Miss interrupted calmly. But you should take some time to look around. I'll be here, pulling some weeds. At a loss for words, Henrietta stood there as she watched Mist put on an apron and proceed to get down on her knees and start off on a row of vegetables. Go on. Watching an old woman pull weeds isn't going to cure your boredom. Hesitantly, Henrietta started to wander around the garden. She couldn't remember the last time she was in a real garden. Most of her life was spent in one city or another. You could see people trying to grow a plant or two on their windowsill, and you knew someone was growing some pot somewhere. I wrote this in 2015. But there was never enough room for a real garden like this. Not even the community garden looked like this, and with good reason. This was a garden you had to survive on. It started to dawn on Henrietta that this woman who could talk to ghosts like they were people didn't get very much company out here in the way of the living. That must make it really hard to get supplies. I wonder how long she has lived out here like this. Eventually, Henrietta explored her way through the whole garden. It wasn't exactly large. The garden was actually pretty methodical in its layout. It was as if Mist was trying to minimize the effort it took to care for it. She didn't exactly know how. She knew that. It just felt obvious. When Henrietta finished looking at some watermelons, she headed back to Mist, who was tending to some string beans. Seen everything already, have you? Mist said, looking up from her work. I think so. Anything stand out? No, not really. Really? Well, that's okay. Anything else you want to look at? Is there anything else to see? Always. The way Miss said always made Henrietta take a step back. It wasn't said maliciously or anything. It just did something to her ghost brain. Always. Go on. You've stared at zombies wander aimlessly around all day and eviscerate survivors. Go on and watch something else for a change. Mist was right, and Henrietta felt a bit lighter after hearing it. With a weird sensation of confidence, she left Mist and ventured out into the woods. "So what are we supposed to do now?" said a ghost in the middle of a congregation. "Most of our bodies have been burnt to ash, and the ones who still have them are scattered out of the city." "We're fallen," said another ghost, verging on hysteria. "Fallen ghosts. We all know what happens to those who fall. I heard someone say it's worse than being single without cats." "Calm down," another ghost started. "We're not fallen as long as we're together." "But she's right," another one said. "We're fallen. Where will we get our stories now? Who will talk to us? What world is this without watching our corpses fight survivors?" "I don't know," the other ghost said abruptly, making the congregation float and start to step back. This, at least, made all the bickering momentarily stop. Even he was startled, silent by his own voice. None of the city ghosts had ever seen another ghost lose their temper before. You should be sleeping, but you're too invested. I am in page 46 of 128. There's no way I'm finishing this book tonight. I could have stopped it right there, because this is a transition to the ghosts that are still in the city. Let's go. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Made all this bickering momentarily stop. Even he was startled by the silent by his own voice. None of the city ghosts had ever seen another ghost lose their temper before. There was never a reason to get mad before, aside from getting cheated out of a story trade. It is a real thing. Isn't that what audiobooks are supposed to be? But that seemed to work itself out in its own way. The last ghost was right, though. What was their world without zombies for survivor fights? "I suggest we stay put for now," he said, recovering from the shock. "It was what we're supposed to do when we lose our corpses after all. And being in this big group, will help others find us." "How will anyone find us when they are probably sitting still like us?" "Shut up," he shouted as the audience gasped. "Staying put is the best way to not get everyone more lost than we already are. We may be fallen, but we don't have to act like it. Let's just stick together and figure something out." "I don't understand." "But I'm not Story Master Mike," another ghost said. "That's right, and don't you forget it," said Story Master Mike. Every word in his name is capitalized. Story Master Mike is capital S, capital M, capital M. SMM. He's an important guy. And I try to point that out, but they love the Story Master Mike because he tells the best stories. That was very early in the story, if you guys are tuning in now. The forest was calmly buzzing with noise as Henrietta made her way along a path between the thriving, lush plant life. Mist had talked her into going out, and so far, she wasn't enjoying it one bit. "So then I said to her," Story Master Mike said, "We already heard that one already," a ghost whined. "Have you?" Story Master said. A sea of faces nodded at the congregation of ghosts sat like children in the burning rubble of this hellscape. Really? I don't usually tell that one. It's one of my best stories. You told it 20 minutes ago, the whiny ghost said. Oh. Then did you hear the one about the bacon accident and the trapeze artist? At a river, Henrietta sat on a rock as she watched a deer drink, while the sunlight fluttered through the leaves, playfully dancing on the ripples of the water. The world around her was a sea of tranquil peace. In short, she was totally bored out of her mind. And so, the doctor said that he could remove it, but he wouldn't be able to sit down for a week. You told that one too, before the other one. A ghost interrupted. Well, then, I don't know. Maybe someone else should have a go while I remember another story. We've already taken our turns. Come on, we paid up in full for another story from the Story Master. Story Master Mike was rubbing his ghostly chin in thought. It began to dawn on him that he was best at quick stories that could be told before the other ghosts' corpses wandered away. He took no pride in telling long captive stories that made another ghost lose their corpse. How else would the word continue to get around about how good a storyteller he was? But now here he was, a potential permanent audience, and he was beginning to run out of material. And that made him feel really frustrated. He had to change his game if he was going to stay on top. He liked his title. He liked being someone important. And hells be damned if he was going to lose it just like that. Well then, Story Master Mike started. Have I told you the time I became an identity thief? Henrietta just couldn't get it. What was there to look out here? If there wasn't a struggle for survival to watch. I did write this book. I wrote it back in 2015. I have 4 books in total. This is the second one I ever wrote. Oh, thank you so much. Henrietta just couldn't get it. What was there to look at out here if there wasn't a struggle for survival to watch? There was so much passion and drama in watching the survivors fend off the dead simply for the sake of living just a little bit longer. Sure, a few ghosts fell in the process of the raids, but the ones that survived, well, they had the best story. It was so addicting trying to hear about all the different vantage points to fill in all the gaps to just one event, but Miss was right. It was a hell of a brutal thing to take pride in and be entertained by the fragile, violent survival of the few living people that remained. It was like watching animal cruelty videos on the internet strictly out of boredom. I don't read as much as I used to. Maybe when school is over, I'll get back into reading. But I haven't found an author I like reading yet. Like, I have tons of Terry Pratchett books, and you can kind of hear my Terry Pratchett love come out of my books sometimes. More tapping. I'll get more tapping. It was like watching animal cruelty videos on the internet strictly out of boredom. Okay, maybe not as bad as that. Well, maybe more. It was like watching gladiators fight to the death in some Colosseum in ancient Rome. Thinking about things like they were gladiators didn't make it sound any better, though. But that kind of entertainment had been around a whole lot longer than she had been dead for. And on that note, she was dead. What did it matter? what she did as a ghost. It's not like she had to be responsible for anything anymore, or was able to do anything about, well, anything. She had died a horrible and gruesome death, and there was nothing left for her to do but watch as others succumbed to the same fate as herself. Henrietta paused as she flusteringly exhaled a ghostly breath. Defeated. She didn't know why, but she felt defeated and tired. There was nothing left out here in these woods that she wanted to see, so she got up and headed back to Mist. That was probably the most horrible thing I have ever heard someone else ever doing in their life, said a ghost in the front row. If you hadn't already died like the rest of us, I think I would have wished for the zombies to tear you apart. So, you liked it? Storymaster Mike asked. There was a hesitation in the crowd before the audience began to slowly applaud. Surely it picked up to a torrent of cheers. It was hands down the best story I've heard in all my afterlife, a random ghost volunteered. Especially the part where the guy got sent to jail for mugging someone because he had no money anymore, another ghost added. Tell us another one, someone in the back shouted, which got some cheers from the rest of the audience. Come on now, we all got to pay our dues for our stories. Storymaster Mike said. The crowd applause died down as everyone felt crestfallen. I don't think I have another story that could measure up to that, someone said, followed by a few others conceding the same fact. Is there some other way we could pay you? I don't know, Storymaster said, a little shocked and taken aback by the notion. He couldn't think of anything that he could get from anyone else beside more stories and gossip. I'll have to think about that. Henrietta got back to the cottage around midday in a huff. She found Miss still tending her garden in the back. What's the big idea messing with my head? Henrietta burst out as she rapidly approached Mist. I'm sorry, what? What's that now, sweetie? Miss said in a calm tone of a person who is paying a lot of attention to carrots. Don't you think I've had a hard enough time just being dead than to be questioned? I was happy not knowing. And then you had to go and tell me how crappy it was to watch my corpse kill everybody. Well, while I'm dead, I died. And I can damn well do what I like. Miss didn't move much, more than what she was required for weeding. And she did it silently. Henrietta stood there, fuming angrier at her for how calm she was. Miss' sheer calmness made her feel so livid, and that made her wish so much that she could just wipe that serenity right off her face, right then and there. But there it stayed. Henrietta felt hopeless. I'm sorry, Miss said, as she continued down the line pulling weeds. Henrietta stared silently at her, waiting. Well, what? Miss asked as she paused in her work. That's all? Just sorry? Yes. Henrietta stared angrily at Mist, as Mist looked back at her with a peacefully kind expression. It cut Henrietta's heart like a knife, And it made her angrier that she didn't know why. Why was she this angry? Why did she feel angry at this kind old woman? Why anything? Why everything felt burning in her ghostly body as she couldn't contain herself. She screeched at the world as the birds burst out of the nearby tree while Mist stayed calmly still. Henrietta fell to her knees, wishing she had a body that was capable of crying. Mist then stood up, dusting off her garden apron. "I'll go make us some tea," Mist said before she made her way inside the cottage. Henrietta stayed on the garden ground, hugging her knees for a bit, before she conceded and got up and followed Mist inside. "You want us to do what now?" "I want you all to go and bring me a ghost," Mike said. I don't understand. We are all ghosts. I'll just go over there and to Harry and bring him over, shall I? I mean another one. Someone who is not in this group. Why? I don't know. It was the only thing that came to mind that you all could do for my stories. You all want to hear more stories, don't you? The crowd was a sea of nods. "Well, then go out and bring me another ghost." The crowd hesitated. "What's wrong?" "It's just, what are you going to do with them?" Story Master Mike paused to think for a second, which is no easy task for an entity that has a real issue with being able to make things up. "Make them tell us stories? We are running out of them. Each of us only have so many, and there's safety in numbers, I mean. What is there for us to be safe from? We're all dead. Getting lost?" If Story Master Mike could sweat, he would have been drenched from all the effort he was putting into this inquiry. For a ghost, this was genius-level creativity. Even if what he said was true, being a leader needed a certain level of creativity, and Story Master was suspecting that he was quickly becoming a leader. Either that or he was learning how to control everyone, but the more he tried to think about that, the less he could see any difference. Mainly because he needed a bit more creativity than he had to be able to see one. But he wasn't about to admit that to anyone, especially not when he had them doing what he wanted. But that was the thing. Why did he really want another ghost? He made up the reason on the spot for the sake of the crowd, but where was his motivation when he came to it? Maybe it was because he realized the only other commodity out here besides stories are ghosts, with more stories. He was vaguely aware that someone was asking him another question. I said, how are we going to find others without getting lost ourselves? And how are we going to bring them back with us? I say we try and figure that out. There are other fallen out there. Let's try and get them. But how? Mist took the kettle off the flame and set it on a cozy in the middle of the table. Henrietta had been sitting quietly in her chair, watching Mist like a cat. But that was a lie. Henrietta told herself to sit still. In between the silence, when Mist put the kettle on, to her taking it off, Henrietta had been trying to avoid the fact that she had broken down out there in the garden. She sat miserably frustrated that she didn't know what to do with herself anymore. It was like being a toddler who knew they did something wrong but was squirming because they knew someone was going to yell at them. Except Mist wasn't yelling at her. She stayed peacefully calm as she seeped some herbs in her cup. Henrietta, Mist said, making Henrietta jump, would you be so kind and see if your friend would like to join us? What? Henrietta said, taken off the guard by Mist's request. Go and wake him. He should still be sleeping. How do you suppose I do that? I'm a ghost. I don't know how I'm even talking to you. People are more susceptible to other things when they're asleep. It lets them slip into other worlds through their dreams. He'll notice you, but he probably won't remember it. Takes training to do that. So you're saying you're asleep right now? Just go and wake him, Miss said dryly. This is a conversation for another time. Henrietta shrugged, then flew upstairs to the ceiling. Miss then turned to the cupboard to put back some herbs and take out a tin full of dry tea leaves. She then counted under her breath to 5 before a blood-curdling scream bellowed out from upstairs, followed by what sounded like a herd of stampeding elephants crashing through the china shop as a set of bagpipes squealed for no reason. Miss sighed to herself as she tipped a spoonful of tea into the pot. I thought I had put those away, she said under her breath, and she sat down. The man limped carefully down the stairs as Henrietta followed closely behind him, with a look of bewilderment skewed on her face. Care for some tea? Miss said deliberately, but not unkindly, as she poured a cup out for him. The man hesitated. Yes, I mean you. Have a seat. Slowly and cautiously, the man took a seat as Mist placed a cup in front of him. He stared at it as if it were poison. Come now, she said as she poured out a cup for herself. If I wanted you dead, you would have already had a big gaping hole where your head used to be. Miss then sat the herb teacup in front of Henrietta, then took a sip of her own cup. Miss then set a herb teacup in front of Henrietta. I'm gonna need tea myself if this keeps up. It's our Halloween special. Come now, Miss said as she poured out a cup for herself. If I wanted you dead, you would already have a big gaping hole where your head used to be. Miss then set the herb teacup in front of Henrietta, then took a sip from her own cup. She looked up to see both of them staring at her. Well now, isn't this nice? The 3 of us sitting down to tea. The man tensed up at her words and looked as though he wanted to run. This startled Henrietta, who still had a bewilderment look on her face, making her knock over her teacup. The man then fell back over his chair and rolled to his feet in a very gracefully ungraceful manner. It's called the Ghosts of the Zombie Apocalypse. The man then fell back over his chair, rolled to his feet in a very gracefully ungraceful manner, like a crab attempting to somersault backwards. Henrietta, in turn, jumped back, just as frightened by her actions, obliviously knocking over her own chair over. Mist was the only one who stayed perfectly calm as she took another sip of tea. Carefully, she put her cup back on the table before she went and uprighted the chairs. She then picked up Henrietta's cup and refilled it with hot water. Setting the cup to the side, she went in the cupboard for a towel, leaving Henrietta stunned and the man on the verge of hyperventilating. Curiosity overpowered Henrietta as she went and inspected the cup closely before she poked her finger through the cup, making it rattle in the saucer. The man let out a whimper and then ducked under the table to look underneath it before rushing over to pick up the cup, spilling more tea all over the table. "It's not a trick," Miss said, coming back with a few more towels for either of you. Miss took the unresisting teacup from the man's hand before setting it on the table and mopping up the dripping tea up from the floor. Uneasily, the man staggered back and sat down heavily in his chair. "I imagine there's a lot you can't tell me," Miss said from the floor. "Because you cannot talk." The man's body stiffened. "I don't know when you lost your voice, or if you ever had one," Miss said as she stood up and wrung the towel out over the sink. "And I'll bet you haven't had much company for a very long time." Miss turned back to look at him with a sharp look in her eye, and he looked back at her like a deer momentarily frozen in headlights. "I can't be sure if you are alive, dead, or somewhere in between. But you do know how to listen." The man remained unchanged. "Well, as long as I have your ear, then you should know there's a whole lot that goes on that we don't get told about. And you being special like you are, I'll bet you don't get told much of anything." Miss sat down and sipped her tea. "So here's the deal. You mind your manners, keep an open ear, and help out. And then you and your friend here are welcome to stay." Miss finished her tea before getting up and placing the cup in the sink. "You're not a prisoner here. But with the world as it is right now, it seems everywhere is a prison for everyone. Take some time to think about it. I don't need any help from no one that can't commit to the chores at hand." Mist glanced at Henrietta, especially with the way life is right now. She turned back to look at the man who appeared to be cowering while standing straight up. If you're still alive, we should get those bandages changed. Either way, you need a bath. If you're going to be a zombie, you might as well be a clean one. The solar heater should have the water nice and warm by now. Go and get cleaned up. I'll have you something to eat by the time you're done." The man seems to relaxed a little. Henrietta, meet me in the garden when you're ready." Mist got an odd look from the man. "No, not you. That's your friend's name there. I'm going to have to figure out something to call you, but that's later. Now, off you go." The man hesitated for a moment before slowly going upstairs, where the sound of running water gradually came through the ceiling, shortly followed by the sound of someone slipping and breaking something made of glass. Mist winced. She winced her eyes and went, I really liked that vase too. She said under her breath. Oh well. Come on out when you're all done being bewildered, dear. After Mist left, Henrietta looked around the quiet room, then back at the teacup she had knocked over. Words escaped her. She couldn't even think of words to describe the feeling of not having any words. It was an awkward and vexing place to be before she thought, well, actually, that's a good way to describe it. Awkward and vexing. Henrietta chuckled to herself awkwardly out of tension before she remembered Miss beckoning call and followed her out to the garden. This was turning out to be a very unusual day, even for being a ghost. We are on page 57 of 128. What do you mean you can't find anyone? Mike said. Well, a few of us went over there, just within view, but we couldn't see anyone over there, so we came right back. You couldn't be mad at them. You couldn't blame them for not having an imagination to try to look further. What it came down to was that they were all afraid of getting lost, and rightfully so. They all secretly knew that as soon as they couldn't see any of the other ghosts, they would get lost. It's not that they couldn't remember how to get back or what direction they had gone. And they were really good at remembering details, landmarks, and directions. It's all they did all day. It's just that they needed something to hold on to. Something other than themselves close by for them to be able to go anywhere, unfortunately. That used to be their own corpse. When they didn't have anything, they just stopped. Couldn't decide anything anymore. Like a switch went off. Honestly, that terrified everyone. No one wanted to get turned off like that. But it did happen. Okay, Mike said after some thought. We are going to make a line, or a chain of sort. I want you and your others to go back over there until you can barely still see us. Then I want one of you to stand still where they can still see this group. This little group that went with you. And the rest of you go further until the next one can still see the last one standing still. Brilliant. Mike did a 180 spin to see a ghost that he didn't recognize. But the same could be described. Most of the other ghosts in the group. It was a big city before it had been bombed to the ground. And for as much as the zombies does wander around, his corpse sure didn't get it to go everywhere. There was always someone new to meet. But this ghost had a sharper look on his face compared to all the dull, childlike expressions of his listeners. He had to have sharp eyes like that to give him as quick a response as he just gave. It made Mike feel uneasy. Right, Mike said uneasily, as he turned back to the other ghosts he was talking to. Let's get this chain going and start bringing people back. No one's going to get lost if we do it this way, right? If we do this right. Okay, the ghost said enthusiastically before brushing off. Back to the search party. You're doing a good job out there, Story Master. Mike turned around to look at the other ghost. His sharp expression gave him the willies. It's just Mike right now, Mike said. At least until we start getting more people here for me to be a story master for. Mike didn't know when he started thinking like that because he loved his title. That was another weird thing that was happening around here. So much was happening so fast that this little world of storytelling zombie followers, now that they lost their zombies to follow, so much was happening so fast to this little world of storytelling zombies followers now that they have lost their zombies to follow. How come? I don't know. It just doesn't feel right, Mike said. It felt odd, Mike said, and he felt odd saying it. Well, that's why you're the boss. Boss, Mike thought. Right. Anyways, was there something you wanted? A short story or something? So many people have been asking for one. Yes, everyone does seem to be getting a bit antsy lately. Antsy, Mike thought. No, I just wanted to watch you work. No, I just wanted to watch you work, the sharp-eyed ghost said. Work, Mike thought. Now that was a thing. He didn't know what he was doing with telling people what to do, but he didn't think of calling it work till after he said it. Well, that's the other thing he just said. He was watching me, like another ghost watches a zombie. That disturbed him to his core, and he didn't know why. Well, stop, Mike said. What? I mean, go help the others. They could use someone help searching, someone sharp like you. And that's why you're the boss. The ghost practically saluted. Mike stood there idle as he watched the sharp-eyed ghost join the search group. Hello, Marine. How are you doing tonight? The ghost practically saluted. Mike stood idly as he watched the sharp-eyed ghost join the search group as they headed off with enthusiasm. Something felt very worrisome about all this, and he had no idea why. Maybe it was in the way the ghost made him feel like a zombie, like a mindless rabid beast who had aimlessly wandered while a silent audience critiqued and took notes of your actions. That's why we have VODs. In essence, he felt like the other ghost was better than him, and he suspected that he knew it and was poking fun at Mike's expense. Now here was a ghost he needed to keep a close eye on. Almost as if on cue, the sharp-eyed ghost turned and waved back at him from a distance. A very close eye, Mike said to himself, oblivious to the rest of the world, preferably from a very long distance away. He watched as most of the search group moved on beyond his sight and disappeared. You should go, Miss said. What? Henrietta replied. Go, Miss said as she put a freely plucked cucumber in her basket. But I thought you said I was welcome to stay here. Also, what was all that back in there? You are. And I will tell you about that, Miss said as she pulled out an oddly deformed carrot that looked like an expensive, inappropriate toy for a female pleasure. Well, Henrietta said, while trying to hide her gross embarrassment as Miss obliviously placed 2 radishes that looked an awful lot like mammary glands on either side of the phallic vegetable. Just not right at this moment, Miss said as she pulled out a bucket. I'm getting embarrassed reading this. And began to milk a goat. What do you mean? Henrietta said, almost with a squeak, as a straight. Mist is milking a goat, and a little bit of it splashed on the vegetables. Seriously, are you messing with me with those vegetables? Of course I am, dear, Miss said as she kept filling the bucket. Look at the basket again. Henry winced as she dared herself to look again, only to find that none of the vegetables looked like what she saw a moment before. How did you? Only a test, dear. Shows me I'm right. You're so high-strung right now that you need a breather. Henrietta felt struck numb. She didn't know what to think or feel, especially after that illusion. This place is overwhelming you, and yes, the dead can get overwhelmed. Trust me, you need a breather. Where shall I go? Anyways, anywhere will do. Just go already. Things will settle down by the time you get to wherever you should be. Henrietta began, but thought better of it and wandered away. Mist stayed still as she kept milking the goat until she was sure Henrietta was out of earshot and began laughing so hard that she went red in the face and fell backwards on the ground so hard, momentarily knocking the wind out of her. She kept laughing for some time after that before she calmed down. When she could breathe again, she went over to the straw basket and tipped out its contents, which looked exactly like Henrietta originally thought they appeared. This has got to be the most pornographic crop I have ever pulled out of the good green earth, Miss said with a big smirk before looking up at the way Henrietta had gone. Good timing. If I didn't know any better, I'd say fate had something special in store for that poor dead woman. Honestly, I'd have given anything to know what she would look like in life. Back so soon, Mike said. Did you find anyone? No. But the other ghosts had gone. Well, that's a shame, Mike said with a slight sympathy and a lot of relief. And so have a few of the others with him. Wait, what do you mean? I mean, as soon as they got to the edge of my vision, they stopped. As soon as they got to the edge of my vision, they stopped, and I saw one left, like we planned, until. Well, I stayed still as I looked back at the other ghosts behind me, and at the next one, just as the one before me did, and the one before him did. But the one after me, I turned back and she was gone. Mike didn't say anything. He just held an expression that said, I'm not going to say anything. I didn't rush back anyways. Right away anyways. I waited. I did. The ghost said in a panic from Mike's glare. Mike nodded in acknowledgement. They were our own after all. They were our own. The ghost continued. We don't have our corpses anymore, but at least we have each other. That's how we all feel now. None of us want to see any of us go missing. And now we have. The ghost looked wretchedly tortured. All Mike could do was sigh. You did well. This wasn't your fault. You stayed in sight, like I said. Maybe I sent you out too thin. Who knows? Okay, first things first. I want you to go and double up. And go after the ones we just lost. They can't be far. Just put someone in between you as far as you can see, and maybe A runner who can go along the chain so you don't have to leave your post if you need to report something. Got that? Looking less tortured, the ghost looked up at Mike with a bit of awe and respect, which made Mike feel odd. You do look out for us, the ghost said, which made Mike feel even odder. But how will I signal the runner if he can't see me? Just, listen, what's your name? Benny, sir. Sir, Mike thought. He didn't know how he felt about that, but it didn't feel terrible when Benny said it, rather than if the sharp-eyed ghost had said the same. Well, Benny, you should wave to the ghost next to the chain, and have them wave to the next till the waving reaches the ghost the sight of the runner. Then they'll come right to you. How does that sound? Benny looked happy at being asked his opinion, and he tried to look as though he was thinking about it, which made him look adorable. Mike had come to know what it looked like when a ghost really thought about something, and Benny looked as if he had never thought in his life or death, but also didn't want to let anyone down. It made Mike smile in a genuine, light-hearted way that he wasn't accustomed to even when he was alive. I think it's a good idea, Benny said firmly, finally, trying to act smart. Mike patted the ghost on the shoulder and beamed his smile at him, which surprised both them for a moment, as physical contact between ghosts was almost unheard of. Go get our friends back, Benny, Mike said importantly. I'm counting on you. Surprisingly enough, he really was. Bugs flew around carelessly as Henrietta pushed on. She had no direction. It bothered her that she was just out here practically moments before. But things weren't the same a few moments before, were they? She felt different, like a cross between a pissed-off frustration and a growing determination, and both were burning her out. She didn't even know she could burn out. Why now? She said. It wasn't like were not a million times already when she could have melted down, but she hadn't. The only time she could even vaguely remember when she was about to completely lose it was Henrietta stopped in her tracks. When she had died. Slowly, she started moving again. So what? Everyone dies. I mean, everyone did die. Why shouldn't you lose it when you die? Henrietta slowed down. But I didn't lose it. She looked up at the clear sky. None of us did. Henrietta stood there, with that last thought hanging in her head, in the air like a dead fish. It was like she knew there was something there, and it stunk like a smelly itch in her mind. But she didn't know how to handle it, or maybe that was the wrong analogy, or whatever. It felt significant, or wrong, or something else. I'll forget it, Henrietta shouted to the world as she felt hot and sort of seethed while she stood in the middle of the forest. A noise behind her made Henrietta turned sharply around. Two watery, gentle eyes met hers as they peeked through the leaves. She jumped back in defense, then felt silly for doing so and relaxed. The deer then pushed itself through the brush, then stood before Henrietta, looking gently at her as she looked back. The deer then playfully bobbed its head and stamped its hoof on the turf. Henrietta simply stared at the doe as she did it again. Henrietta began to feel confused when the doe suddenly burst into the sprint through the trees. Hey, wait! Henrietta said before giving chase to the ghostly deer. Henrietta kept the doe in sight for a bit before it disappeared. For as fast as a ghost can move, the ghostly deer appeared to be much quicker. She searched for another few minutes before giving up. Looking up around her at her new surroundings, she found she had gotten herself into a strange part of the forest. Things didn't feel right here, like an air of sickness fell thick on the surroundings. A low noise started to ebb just out of sight. It sounded like a growl or a moan from something that wasn't used to doing either. A sharp crunch startled Henrietta. She knew she was dead, but she found out that since she had lost her corpse, it was easy to forget that. Nothing reminded you more of that fact than seeing your own rotting body in front of you day after day. Recovering her senses, Henrietta went in the direction of the crunch to find a doe standing uneasily as it bent over another deer on the ground. Soft horror started to creep into Henrietta's realization. Another crunch was heard just out of view. And another. The forest was slowly filling with the sounds of bones being crunched in the teeth of deer. Henrietta was used to this kind of thing. But these deer? The forest became a low howl of moaning deer coming from the back of the dead, as the sea of red glowing eyes shone brighter in the filtered sunlight. They lifted up their heads and turned to look at her. Well, this was new. Soon, a herd of deer were all staring at Henrietta, and nothing else, dead or not, that gave her the willies. And then as one they charged. Henrietta grabbed her head in defense and screamed as the herd charged through her. After they had passed, she opened her eyes and felt all her ghostly pieces to see if they were all still there. Looked in all directions, in the direction of the stampede. She looked in the direction of the stampede. Missed, Henrietta said softly in realization. She didn't know how she knew, but she knew that that way was where Miss Cabin was. She began to charge after them when a ghostly doe appeared in front of her. Then another, followed by a herd of ghostly deer appearing out of the forest. They all seemed lost. Henrietta didn't know what to do, or if she could or should do anything. But the words, "Come on," found her lips somewhere. The first doe shook her head. Henrietta stared, dumbfounded at her for a bit before the doe seemed to gesture for her to go. Henrietta nodded, then sped after the herd of zombie deer. She knew the man wouldn't have any problem with them, but Miss herself seemed vulnerable, especially because she doubted she had enough shotgun shells for a whole herd of zombie deer. Everyone was in a panic. What the runners said he saw didn't make any sense.
What he did know for sure was that Benny was lost to them, and not in the way that the ghosts normally get lost. The runner said something came at them, and Benny charged it like a brave fool. And now Mike was standing there in the center of the crowd, holding the last remaining piece of Benny's arm in his hands. Henrietta rushed on with haste. Staggering zombie deer with 3 or fewer legs zoomed behind her as she pushed on. She didn't know what she could do, but at least she could warn Mist that if the deer didn't get there first, that is, if the deer didn't get there first. Henrietta squeezed her surprisingly burning eyes, dismissed the thought, and found some extra speed from somewhere. The mass of the herd was just up ahead, and they were moving fast. The next bit happened as if it were a dream or a nightmare. Out of nowhere, something rushed the crowd, and then pieces went flying. Mike held his eyes shut, tried to cover his ears to no look as the shrill scream of the paralyzed everyone still. The shrill scream of the thing paralyzed everyone still. People screamed, then went silent over and over again. Mike peeked from his petrified state to see more than half the crowd was gone before he shut them again. Soon the scream stopped, and Mike opened his eyes. There in front of him was the sharp-eyed man standing alone in the sea of ghostly pieces as he licked his fingers. Mike stood there, cowering as a man continued to meticulously lick his fingers. It gave Mike the impression that he was watching a cat clean its claws. Then suddenly, in mid-lick, the man looked up at Mike. "Come on, stop your cowering. We both know that if I wanted to eat you, you would have been eaten." And that Mike was an interesting mouse that had momentarily amused the cat enough to not kill until he's played with it for a little. "Not far from the truth," the man said, as if reading Mike's mind. "Simply put, you entertain me, and that's why you're alive. You have no idea how boring all these ghosts can get just thinking, just talking on and on about mundane things like their boring zombies did all day. Oh, it was excruciating. But honestly, it was the first real interesting thing to happen in quite a while." The man looked at Mike again. "Oh, come on now. You are allowed to speak. I know you're smart enough to not to ask stupid things that would make me want to eviscerate you. So go on. Ask away." Mike stayed silent for a moment. You could see his face contort as he tried to work out as many questions as he could on his own. "Zombie... No. You're a cannibal ghost. Do you need to eat or just like to?" "Ha! You got it in one. But both, really. Now there's something I need from you. Now there's something I need from you." "What?" "A story." Mike was a fast thinker at this point, and having to critically think for a group of unimaginative ghosts, he really knew better than to ask questions why. At least not right away. But 2 things he just had to ask. "Okay, but what do I call you? Or do you not want me to call you anything?"
That's a good question. Mike stayed silently waiting for a reply until the man caught his expression. Well, go on, start the story. I'll tell you if I want you to be calling me anything. No point in telling your food your name until you're sure you want to keep them as a pet. Mike nodded as his not blood froze in his ghostly skin. Just one last thing, if it's not too much to ask. The man nodded, but in a way that said you're on thin ice and it's beginning to creak. Just how much longer have you been dead? The man's eyes grew narrow as he moved real close to Mike, and with a gravely serious, slow voice, he said, "A really long time." Henrietta got to the hut before the deer, but only just. She could hear the stampede coming in. Fortunately, the house was empty. Unfortunately, the house was empty. So were the animals from their pens, at least the smart ones, like the goats. The chickens, on the other hand, were rushing around as if their heads, as the herd of deer arrived, promptly began to chase them around. But these chickens were apparently the survivors of generations of forest free-range chickens. They were used to being chased around by predators of all kinds, including bears and possums. Skills like that made them no easy meal for a zombie deer to catch. Henrietta sat a moment on a tree stump watching the debacle unfold as two synchronized chickens ran head-on across one another's path, making the chasing deer collide into one another so hard that it put them out of the zombie commission. The crunch she heard when they hit made her sure of that. Who would have thought that chickens would be the ultimate zombie deer killer? Not even half the survivors she's seen held an ounce of cunning and coordination these chickens had. It was almost comical until the deer were able to catch a few. It was then that deer had seen enough. She had seen enough of what comes next to not want to see it anymore. It was always the same. You're doing great until you get outnumbered, and then all you can do is run. But the zombies didn't get tired, and then you're trampled. And then Henrietta went inside before the and then and poked around. Some of the deer had ignored the chickens and burst through the way into the disappointing empty clamshell of a house. Now they tore apart and smashed all they could, driven by their mad zombie deer brains with the smell of the living all over the place. She had remembered reading somewhere about how deer have a crazy good sense of smell and can smell things miles away. Well, that made her feel better. That meant that the two must be miles away now. And now you're alone. For real this time. Suddenly rampaging zombie deer, didn't seem so interesting anymore. Which was a lie she knew. But she wanted to pretend that it wasn't. Either way, the mood was ruined. Right now, what she wanted was some space from all the noisy dead. Henrietta flew off into the forest, back towards the only other ghostly home she had ever known. Oh, that's page 71 of 128. I feel like I should pick this up tomorrow night. It's 4:30 in the morning, and I'm losing my voice. Okay, I need to save this because I've been editing it. Alright, you guys. Well, for everybody who's like still
hanging around. I don't know. I don't know how many people are still here. Let me get up the Sunset Lullaby. Just remind me that we're on page 71, I think it was. Silent Bob, thank you so much. So, I think I'm going to, like, after I finish reading this on stream, I'm going to publish it as is. I just need to change the name on the cover to, like, Laugh Lilac Moon, because instead of my real name, because, for one, my real name is very similar to an actual author who has way more books, and so I go, like, no traffic. So I think people would actually find me as Laugh Lilac on Amazon, because these are all published, by the way, like self-published, but they're published. So I'll put that up soon, before Halloween, and then you guys can, like, read the whole book yourself. But we gotta look for people to read. Where is the Sunset Lullaby? Okay, here's Sunset Lullaby, and we'll put the thing up. I forgot to do, like, the outro. So, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be peaceful, and may you be safe. May everyone watching be happy, may everyone watching be healthy, may everyone watching be peaceful, and may everyone watching be safe. May all things be happy, may all things be healthy, may all things be peaceful, and may all things be safe. Alright, remember to vote. I haven't played this all night. Alright, I guess it's dealer's choice. Let's raid the Little Moonling. Right? Or she is live right now, right? Maybe not. Did I forget Georgie? Georgie is also on. I guess we're doing Peebo. I don't know. Someone say word. There's not many people. Like, I feel like she's doing something different tonight. Peebo, go. Okay, we're going Peebo. We don't ever rate Peebo.